loves to talk, and we're training her to speak less.
You ain't tell me to sit down.
Y'all
you
think-
and Ian are some trick. You can't gauge it like, yo, I told y'all to sit down to work my new hire. If you tell me you told me to stay home for something.
In addition to demoting Flip, Joe Budden also demoted Emanny, yes. In the most recent episode of the podcast, well, Joe Budden and his co-hosts, who just so happen to be his buddies and the world's greatest cast, are playing damage control. He now claims that there was no demotion. As the talk from the reaction community grows louder, he is just ordering folks to sit down. This all began when Flip was instructed to visit the Patreon instead of sitting at home for a podcast episode. He would arrive late for that episode, though.
To Patreon, I called Joe, like, why am I coming to Patreon for? And Joe said, just come to Patreon, I'm gonna pay you fully. I end up coming into Patreon late, like an hour and a half.
Since then, he has been instructed to come exclusively on Wednesdays. I see it as a demotion. However, Joe would counter that he was merely advising him to take a break.
Because I'm not agreeing with none of that. Hear it from my mouth. Flip hasn't been demoted. Flip has a lot going on outside of here. So if there's time off to be had, he's at the top of my list to get.
He also instructed Emanny to take a seat. But Emanny responded, hey, you didn't tell me to sit down. You're employing difficult words. I was coping with things, so you told me to go home. However, you're claiming that you sat me down to give Mona, your new employee, some room. He also positioned it in such a manner. He claimed that Mona, his co-host, was a long-winded person. She has a lot of words. She does occasionally talk too much. However, I believe Joe Budden would prefer to have that issue rather than the opposite, which is that individuals are reluctant to share and don't talk. Funny enough, Mona was silent for extended periods of time on the podcast's final episode, just like Flip and Melissa Ford used to be. Emanny is saying, hey, don't say that you were doing that. You were attempting to watch out for me, but in reality, all you were doing was making room for Mona to talk. Flip would also claim that Joe failed to sit him down. I take that to mean that Flip is claiming that the language Joe uses in the episodes isn't the same as what they actually use when they talk on the phone and in other situations. However, I would hesitate to state that it appears as though Joe Budden is altering the message each time he discusses the reasons behind his actions. And that suggests to me that he has a motive. And that explanation is so controversial that it can cause Emanny's ego to flip. In essence, the individuals who have experienced the most problems on the show are the first two men to sit down. Yeah, it's correct. Do you recall Emanny? He was suspended after punching a man. Although it happened on Flip's show, he punched the guy off the Joe Budden podcast. Then there was Flip. Flip nearly got into a fight with Mona behind the scenes, and he's threatened to fight everyone on the program. I am aware that many of you will say, well, we don't know if that's completely true. However, you can infer from the context hints that Mona and Flip had a behind-the-scenes encounter. The fact that Joe is carrying a large manipulation bag is also interesting. One of Joe's more interesting reframing techniques is when he claims that just because something worked out well for you, it doesn't mean that I did anything wrong.
To the moment.
He did too. He went and chased behind his ex all weekend.
You did? Oh, yeah,
He
she
went
was
and
out
chased
here
behind
too.
his
Ooh, I
ex
forgot.
all weekend. I gave one day off he get.
I didn't
and
chase behind no ex.
Sniffing.
Yo, when I sat you down, Flip, you were able to make content for Flip the Network, he adds in this back and forth. Man, you were able to do anything you wanted. I made the correct decision. I was watching out for you. He continues by telling Emanny, when I set you down, Emanny, you were able to go hang out with Mona Divine and Honey Tsunami. Who wouldn't want to spend time with Honey Tsunami? In any case, you can tell that something is wrong, the way Joe Budden is reframing the situation and giving the impression that he helped these guys. Ultimately, Joe Budden is now dealing with a Mona issue. She talks a lot, but sometimes it's just like Flip, so I'm not sure whether he can figure it out. Her research is inadequate. Because Joe Budden hasn't removed the gloves, she's cutting people off and maybe depressing the atmosphere in the room. We'll see if she can change, but as you can see from the most recent show, she was very silent on the musical parts and hardly spoke at all. She seems a little one-dimensional to me, and I'm not sure if she will be able to develop. will need to observe whether she can engage with others and offer her opinions on specific topics. For that kind of dynamic, I believe she can look to Mark. He is adept at switching between themes. Mona, on the other hand, is enthusiastic about what she does and will never stray from it. People are also making fun of the way she seems on the podcast. I don't want to seem harsh, but I believe that women in podcasting have it in a different way than guys. Flip might have plumbers, but they don't need to dress up. Even I don't really need to dress up to do content. However, criticism of women is more severe. Therefore, it will be interesting to observe how Mona responds to criticism of her on-air persona. The fact that she's encroaching on a new audience that is dominated by women may be a more serious problem. 80 to 90% of the listeners to the Joe Budden podcast are guys. And additionally, Mona will receive stronger criticism for cutting people off because she's new and lacks tact, even though she presents as one of the men. We'll see how that works. If you like Mona on the show, please let me know. After a few episodes, I've noticed a lot of Mona criticism in the comments. When I compliment her, I get so much negative feedback that people ask me, "Daddy, why are they making you say nice things about Mona? Is it the reason you don't criticize her?" So I will be adopting a more critical perspective. And I want to make one very clear statement before I wrap up this video. You are being demoted when they claim that you are not. "Hey, I'm not demoting Flip," says Joe Budden. "I'm allowing him more time to pursue his interests." Everybody has worked at their place of employment at some point in their lives, and when they implement a new policy, they make it sound like the greatest thing ever. Do you recall the days when you had to download software applications on your computer to keep track of your activities? Fly was how they sold that. "Hey, we're going to download this program. You won't even need to log in, Jerry. You won't even need to check in. By simply having you clock in on that app, we'll be able to determine whether we understand how to clock your time." But they failed to disclose that they would have the ability to monitor the websites you visit, the people you converse with, and the people you engage in other activities with. In general, I believe that's what's going on with Flip and Emanny. They are being informed that something is going on, but that isn't actually the case. And Joe Budden's constant manipulation of the story is the most tangible proof of it. "You have not been demoted." "Well, I didn't tell you to take a seat. I'm merely trying to create space for Mona." Then in the instance of Emanny, he told him, "Yo, what happened was that I just thought you felt a little, you just seemed like you needed to go home. So I sent you home out of, looking out for you, man. I took care of that for you." He really just wanted to make more room for Mona. It had nothing to do with anything else. So everyone, a lot is happening. Behind the scenes, something really bizarre has taken place. But please share your thoughts with me. Do you believe that Flip has been demoted? Do you believe that Emanny has been demoted? And in addition, the podcast's upcoming Thursday edition is a potential threat. Yes, an episode may be released on Thursday. So in order to prevent them from fighting with Mona on Fridays, Flip and Emanny might be featured more often there. Having said that, kindly follow me on Patreon. You should check out the space I recently created with a former member of the hip-hop and love industries. That was about the image up. Some of you might be surprised, but I think you'll really enjoy it.